My name is Sophia, and this is the tale that unfolds before you. It was that night when Jack lifted my leg and placed it on his lap, unrolling my socks with an intentional slowness, as though revealing something precious and fragile. A thrilling sensation sparked through my skin. I watched the way his fingers moved, each motion deliberate, cautious, and achingly slow, as if time itself held its breath in anticipation. He pressed carefully around a swollen area, his thumbs lingering on spots that stirred an unsettling tension. "You've got soft skin," he murmured, his eyes fixed on something distant. The words hung in the air, heavy and unspoken, like a secret neither of us dared acknowledge. My breath caught in my throat. Those words, they should never have crossed his lips. He turned his gaze to meet mine, his eyes deeper, more intense than they had ever been before. I understood then. The air between us was thick, charged with something unspoken. Silence enveloped us as the rain pounded relentlessly against the windows, its beat echoing the frantic thump of my heart. His hand remained firmly on my leg, an unyielding presence that sent a shiver down my spine. And yet I didn't move. If anyone had suggested, even a year ago, that I would find myself drawn to my stepdad, I would have laughed. I would have scoffed at the very thought of it, dismissing it as absurd, utterly repulsed by the idea. But life, as I've learned, has a way of twisting the very rules we think are unbreakable. It unfolds slowly, piece by piece, subtle, restless, and relentless. That was the moment it all began between Jack and me. I was 17 when my world shifted. My mom chose to marry him. Back then, he barely registered on my radar. He exuded a calm, serene maturity, sitting at the dinner table with his arms tightly folded, a silent sentinel. He spoke only when absolutely necessary, each word heavy with meaning. He was never my father, and he never once tried to be. We barely knew each other, sharing the same space but always separate, each moment thick with unspoken words. Everything changed when I turned 22. My mom's promotion to regional director at her firm felt like a dramatic turning point, as though she had entered into a relentless commitment with her job. There was no room left for anything else. She left before dawn and returned long after dusk, sometimes disappearing for what felt like an eternity. Jack, on the other hand, found himself utterly alone. The weight of solitude pressed down on him. At first it seemed like just another change to navigate. I would prepare dinner, and he would insist on handling the cleanup. In the evenings we sat together, silent, the television flickering in the dim light. The air was thick with unspoken tension, unsettlingly cozy. And then slowly things began to shift. "You're transforming into a woman now," he said one evening, and those words took me completely by surprise. I brushed it off, convinced it was a fatherly comment, despite the way it resonated within me, a deep, unsettling feeling I couldn't ignore. I had always been aware of my allure, the way my curves drew attention, the way my long legs captivated those around me. That undeniable magnetism, it was always there, just beneath the surface. But when it came from him, it struck a chord deep within me, a dangerous chord. "You resemble your mother in her youth," he said again one evening, his gaze fixed on me as I tied my hair into a ponytail. A chill ran down my spine as I felt his eyes on me, sharp and piercing from behind the couch. "But you possess something she could only dream of." I should have spoken up. I should have turned away, walked out, and left it all behind. But I didn't. I forced a smile, and for a moment, I let the silence speak for me. One fateful afternoon, I returned home from the gym, clad only in a sports bra and leggings, the air thick with unspoken tension. Without another word, I rushed to my room, locking the door behind me. I faced the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. The room felt suffocating, as though I couldn't breathe. My thoughts swirled in a chaotic whirlwind, each one colliding with the next. Could that have truly happened, I wondered? Was it all just a figment of my imagination? But when the dawn came, the truth was undeniable. As I emerged from the shower, the towel clung to my skin, a fragile barrier between me and the world outside. My hair, soaked and heavy, stuck to my skin as I moved through the dimly lit hallway. A soft hum escaped my lips, the sound almost a reflection of the tension that still hung in the air. As I neared my room, I saw him, Jack, moving through the hallway. A palpable tension swirled around us, thickening the very air we breathed. He should have turned his gaze elsewhere, yet he didn't. His eyes flickered down to my chest, lingering on my thighs before returning to meet mine. His gaze was charged, almost magnetic, and in that moment I stood frozen. A heartbeat stretched into eternity. Time itself seemed to hold its breath around us. Everything shifted irrevocably in that fleeting instant. In that moment I saw something in him that had remained hidden until now, an intense hunger. But the most agonizing part? Fear didn't grip me. Instead, a surge of desire washed over me. The Sunday evening felt heavy in the air, the rain falling like whispered secrets, shrouding everything in a somber stillness. It was the kind of quiet that cast a shadow over everything, making even the lightest things feel unbearably weighty. Fresh from the shower, I descended the stairs, my socks softly sliding over the wood. I scrolled through my phone absent-mindedly, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the screen. Perhaps I was reckless. Perhaps I longed to feel something more than the suffocating quiet of my thoughts. But in a heartbeat, I lost my footing. There was no dramatic fall, no thunderous crash, just the eerie silence of the moment. My body twisted awkwardly as I landed on the last step, my phone crashing to the floor, the sound echoing in the stillness. A sharp gasp escaped my lips as I fought to steady myself, my fingers gripping the banister. A heartbeat later, he appeared. Jack stepped out of the living room as if he had been poised in the shadows, waiting for this very moment. "Are you all right?" he asked, urgency etching his voice. I think I twisted it," I whispered, my voice trembling with uncertainty. He knelt before me, his fingers curling around my ankle in a tender, yet firm grip. His other hand anchored itself against my thigh, creating a charged moment between us. His touch radiated warmth, his grip strong yet gentle, a silent promise of safety amidst the chaos. Our gazes collided, a silent storm brewing between us. "I must take a look," he insisted, a flicker of urgency in his voice. "Everything is fine," I whispered, wanting to pull away, but he didn't let me. "Let me help you," he interrupted, his voice barely a breath, laced with an unsettling calmness. He was leading me toward the couch, the tension between us palpable, thickening the air with every step. I let him take control. He lifted my leg and placed it gently on his lap, unrolling my sock with an almost reverent slowness, like he was unveiling something rare and delicate. My skin came alive under his touch, tingling with a thrill I couldn't explain. I watched, transfixed, as his fingers moved, cautious, deliberate, hauntingly slow. It was as if time itself had paused, holding its breath along with me. He pressed around the swollen area, his thumbs grazing over spots too sensitive to be touched without consequence. "You've got soft skin," he murmured, his gaze cast elsewhere, though the words clung to the air like smoke. My breath hitched. "You really shouldn't say that," I whispered. Then he looked at me, really looked. His eyes, darker than I'd ever seen them, locked onto mine with a weight I wasn't ready to carry. The silence between us grew thick, oppressive. Outside, the rain lashed against the windows, each drop echoing the frantic rhythm of my heart. His hand remained on my leg. I couldn't move. That night, I stayed in my room, my heart pounding as I replayed every moment. His touch, his gaze, the way his words brushed against me like a forbidden promise. None of it felt accidental. Every detail, every gesture, it all seemed too intentional. From that point on, everything began to unravel. 2 nights later, a knock broke the stillness around 10 p.m. I was in bed, my leg propped up on a pillow, the glow of my laptop flickering shadows across the walls. The sound startled me. It felt too loud, too pointed. "You shouldn't be walking on it yet," he said, voice heavy with something more than concern. He set the tray down and sat on the edge of the bed. The blanket trembled beneath his hand. "I thought I'd help," he said quietly. I hesitated. I should have stopped him, but I didn't. The lotion was warm as it met my skin, spreading slowly under his touch. His hands, steady and careful, were a contradiction of gentleness and something else I couldn't name. A connection sparked in the air, subtle yet undeniable. "The way he's touching her, it's not how a stepfather should behave," a voice in my mind warned. Not with that quiet intensity, not with that haunted gaze cutting through the stillness. "You feel incredible beneath my touch," he murmured. My breath caught. "Jack." He leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Say the word and I'll stop. Just say it." But I didn't. The silence was too loud. Then he pressed his lips to my knee, softly, reverently. It sent a jolt through me. My thigh tensed and a rush of heat surged through my body. I didn't understand what I felt. Longing, confusion, both? I only knew that I didn't pull away. I closed my eyes, the air around us thick, charged with the words neither of us dared say. That night, everything changed. We shattered every boundary. We crossed the line that can never be uncrossed. Whatever tension had been simmering for months finally boiled over. There was no more pretending, no more imagining. Just fire, flesh, secrets, buried deep and now exposed. The next morning, my mother kissed my cheek, a fleeting touch, a small gesture of love before she rushed off to work. She had no idea what had happened while she slept, what I had done, what I had allowed. I watched her leave, her footsteps fading down the hallway. And I felt nothing. The guilt should have crushed me. But it didn't. I could barely withstand the weight of everything that had transpired. Yet in that moment, I found myself completely consumed by it all. Jack kept his distance for most of the day. Not entirely, but a chasm had formed between us. It was as if he was unsure whether I felt any remorse for what had happened. That evening, as I brushed past him in the dimly lit hallway, his voice was low, urgent, and filled with something I couldn't quite place. "We shouldn't talk in the open," he murmured. The weight of his words settled around us, thick with unspoken tension. That was our unspoken rule, our boundary. In her presence, we wore the guise of mere roommates. Every word we spoke was laced with a tension that neither of us dared address. Our glances, subtle but charged, spoke volumes of the unresolved feelings between us. But when she wasn't around, even for something as simple as a trip to the store, we spiraled. The smallest gestures, like him deliberately brushing against me in the kitchen, only deepened the silence. The air thickened, every small detail cutting deeper into the fragile facade we were maintaining. She whispered her secrets into the air, her voice barely a breath away, but the distance between us felt insurmountable. Once, as I leaned down to grab something from the fridge, I felt his hand brush against my lower back, firm, intentional. A shiver ran up my spine. He turned to leave, his departure marked by the unspoken weight of his gesture. "What's so amusing?" she asked, her voice light, but the underlying tone hinted at something deeper. Silence fell around the table. My cheeks burned with unspoken words. Her gaze flickered between us, lingering just a heartbeat too long. Later, she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Has Jack said anything to you recently?" I felt the sharp pang of guilt twist inside me as I replied, "Absolutely not." Her eyes remained on me for a moment longer before she shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes in its brevity. And yet, despite her nonchalance, the air between us was thick with uncertainty, with something unsaid that hung between us like a secret we couldn't escape. I was at a loss, a sense of unease lingered in the air. I forced a laugh, pressed a fleeting kiss to my mother's cheek, and retreated to my room. The weight of unspoken words hung between us, thick and suffocating, but my heart remained restless. Guilt pulsed beneath my skin, growing louder and louder, but I couldn't stop myself, and neither could he. The darkest moment arrived when we crossed the line in her bed. She had left for the weekend, gone on a company retreat, a trip that carried with it its own secrets and unspoken tensions. Jack and I couldn't hold back any longer. We acted before the sun dipped below the horizon, claiming her bed, her pillows, her blankets, surrounding ourselves in the remnants of her presence. It was grotesque and perverse, yet we couldn't pull away. Temptation had ensnared us both, and shame only crept in afterward, after the storm had passed. But even in that moment of twisted indulgence, we found no relief. My name is Sophia, and this is the tale that unfolds before you. It was that night when Jack lifted my leg and placed it gently on his lap, unrolling my sock with deliberate slowness, as if revealing something precious and fragile. My skin tingled with a thrilling sensation, and I watched, mesmerized, as his fingers moved. Every motion was slow, cautious, and achingly deliberate, as if time itself held its breath in anticipation. He pressed carefully around the swollen area, his thumbs lingering on spots that stirred an unsettling tension. "You've got soft skin," he murmured, his gaze fixed elsewhere. The weight of those words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. My breath hitched. Those words should never escape your lips. He looked at me then, his eyes deeper, more intense than they had ever been before. I understood. The air between us was thick, charged with unspoken words. Silence wrapped itself around us as the rain pounded against the windows, the rhythmic beat echoing the frantic thumping of my heart. His hand remained firmly on my leg, an unyielding presence that sent shivers down my spine. And I didn't move. If anyone had dared to suggest even a year ago that I would find myself drawn to my stepdad, I would have scoffed at the absurdity of it all. To all my loyal subscribers, your unwavering support means the world to me. Thank you for being there for every moment shared through my videos. But if anyone had dared to suggest a year ago that I would find myself drawn to Jack, I would have laughed at the thought. I would have found it utterly repulsive. Yet life has a strange way of twisting the rules we believe are unbreakable. It creeps in gradually, piece by piece, stealthy and restless, a palpable weight in the air. And that was the moment it all began between Jack and me. At 17, my world shifted when my mom chose to marry him. Back then, he barely registered on my radar. He exuded a quiet, serene maturity, sitting at the dinner table with arms tightly folded, a silent sentinel. He spoke only when absolutely necessary, each word heavy with unspoken meaning. He was never my father. He never once said the words to me. I dismissed it, convincing myself that it was merely a fatherly gesture, despite the unsettling way it resonated deep within me. But I would be lying if I said it didn't awaken something in me, something dark, unsettling. I had always been aware of my allure, the way my curves drew attention, the way my long legs captivated those around me. That undeniable magnetism had always been there. But when it came from him, it struck a deep, perilous chord within me. The story was far from over. "You resemble your mother in her youth," he said, his gaze fixed on me as I gathered my hair into a ponytail. A shiver ran down my spine, sensing his eyes piercing through the shadows, watching me from behind the couch. "But you possess something she could only dream of." I should have spoken up. I should have turned my back and walked away from it all. But instead, I forced a smile. It was the moment when I allowed the silence to speak for me. One fateful afternoon, I returned home from the gym, clad only in a sports bra and leggings. The air was thick with unspoken tension. I never expected him to be here. But as I passed the living room, there he was, sitting in the recliner, the remote tightly clutched in his hand, his gaze fixed intently on the flickering screen. At least that's what I believed. A shiver ran down my spine as I sensed his gaze lingering on me, even before my eyes met his. It wasn't the fleeting glance that people offer out of politeness. This was different, intentional, measured, weighty. His gaze moved slowly, first from my chest to my stomach, then descending further still. I stood frozen, paralyzed under his attention. "You're sweating," he murmured, his voice dripping with intensity. "Indeed," I whispered, clutching my arms tightly around my chest. "I've just completed a run." He remained utterly still, his gaze unwavering. "Your strength is undeniable." Without a word, I rushed to my room, locking the door behind me. I stood before the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. My thoughts swirled in a chaotic dance of urgency, each one colliding with the next. Could that have truly happened, I wondered? Was it all just a figment of my imagination? But when the dawn arrived, it made the truth painfully clear. As I emerged from the steam of the shower, the towel clung to my skin, a fragile barrier against the world outside. My hair, soaked and heavy, stuck to my skin as I moved through the dimly lit hallway. A soft hum escaped my lips, echoing the tension that lingered in the air. As I approached my room, I saw him, Jack, moving down the hallway. A palpable tension hung between us, thick and oppressive. He should have looked away, should have turned his gaze elsewhere. But he didn't. His eyes flickered down to my chest, then lingered on my thighs before returning to meet my eyes. The intensity in his gaze was electric, charged with something unspoken. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. A heartbeat stretched into eternity, and it felt as if time itself held its breath around me. In that fleeting moment, everything shifted irrevocably. In that brief moment, I saw something in him that had been hidden until now, an intense hunger. And the most agonizing part? Fear didn't grip me. A surge of desire enveloped me, powerful and confusing. The Sunday evening hung heavy in the air, the rain falling like whispered secrets, cloaking everything in a somber stillness. It was the kind of silence that made even the lightest moments feel unbearably weighty. Fresh from the shower, I descended the stairs in my socks, each step careful as I scrolled through my phone, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the screen. Perhaps I was reckless. Perhaps I longed to feel something more. In any case, I lost my footing. There was no drama, no sudden crash. The silence rained down, broken only by the sharp gasp that escaped my lips as I twisted my ankle. The world tilted dangerously as I landed awkwardly on the final steps, my phone crashing to the floor. The sound echoed in the stillness. I flinched, my fingers tightening around the banister as I struggled to steady myself. A heartbeat later, he appeared. Jack, stepping out of the living room as if he had been waiting in the shadows, poised for this very moment. "Are you all right?" He hurried over, urgency etched across his face. I I believe I twisted it," I whispered, my voice trembling with uncertainty. He knelt before me, his fingers curling around my ankle with a tender yet firm grip. His other hand anchored itself against my thigh, creating an electric moment between us. His touch radiated warmth, strong yet gentle, a silent promise of safety amid the chaos. Our gazes met, and in that instant, a silent storm began to brew between us. "I must take a look," he insisted, a flicker of urgency in his voice. "Everything is fine. Let me help you," he interrupted softly, his voice low and calm, but laced with something unsettling. He gently guided me toward the couch, a palpable tension thick in the air. I let him take control. He lifted my leg, placing it carefully on his lap, unrolling my sock with deliberate slowness, as though unveiling something precious and delicate. My skin ignited with a thrilling sensation as I observed the way his fingers moved. Each motion was deliberate, cautious, hauntingly slow, like time itself held its breath. He pressed around the swollen area, his thumbs grazing over sensitive spots that were better left untouched. "You've got soft skin," he murmured, his gaze fixed elsewhere. The weight of his words hung in the air, unspoken, like a secret neither of us dared to acknowledge. My breath hitched in my throat. "You really shouldn't say that." He fixed his gaze on me then, his eyes darker, more intense than ever before. The air between us thickened, heavy with unspoken words. We sat in silence, the rain pounding against the windows, its relentless beat echoing the frantic thumping of my heart. His hand remained firmly on my leg, and I found myself frozen in place, unable to move. That night I stayed in my room, my heart racing as I replayed every moment in my mind. Each detail felt sharp and haunting. The caress, the gaze, the whispers. It all felt so deliberate, every moment charged with an undeniable weight. From that point forward, everything spiraled out of control. 2 days later, the sound of a knock echoed through the stillness of the night, piercing the air around 10 p.m. I lay in bed, my leg propped up, the glow of my laptop screen flickering before me. It drew me into a world of tension, a world filled with uncertainty, pulling me deeper into the shadows of what was unfolding.